It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when I found out my parents had already decided I didn't live there anymore. I remember the time because I checked my phone twice on the walk up the driveway. I had stayed after school to meet with an Army recruiter in the guidance office. Nothing dramatic, just paperwork and questions about the delayed entry program. I was 17, a senior, 2 months from graduation. I wasn't running away. I was planning ahead. The house looked normal. Same faded shutters, same dent in the garage door from when my dad backed into it 3 years earlier and blamed the mailbox. Nothing about it warned me. I slid my key into the lock. It didn't turn. I pulled it out and tried again slower this time. Still nothing. The key fit, but the lock didn't recognize it anymore. That's when I noticed the black trash bags lined up against the brick wall beside the door. 3 of them. Tied tight. Clean. Not ripped open like someone had thrown them together in anger. They were neat. Organized. Like someone had taken their time. I didn't need to open them to know what was inside. My winter coat. My school notebooks. My running shoes. The hoodie I'd worn since freshman year. Everything that had been in my room that morning. I knocked once, then harder. Footsteps came from inside. The door opened just enough for my dad's face to fill the gap. He didn't look surprised. He looked prepared. "You're old enough," he said. "You want to act grown, be grown." I laughed, not because it was funny. My brain just didn't have another reaction ready. "I have homework," I said. "My stuff's in there." He pushed one of the trash bags forward with his foot. It slid a few inches across the concrete. "That's your stuff." My mom appeared behind him, arms crossed. She didn't step forward. She didn't soften it. "You've been talking to recruiters behind our backs. You think you're ready for the real world fine. Start now." I told them I was still 17. My dad shrugged. "You'll be 18 soon enough. Don't come back in here expecting us to fix your mistakes." The door shut. The new deadbolt clicked into place. It's amazing how loud that sound is when you're on the outside. I stood there for a full minute staring at the door like it might change its mind. It didn't. A car drove past. The neighbor's dog barked. The world kept moving like nothing had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from a classmate about calculus homework. I looked at the battery. 4%. I dragged the trash bags to the curb and sat down next to them. One of them tipped over and a sneaker fell halfway out. That was the moment it stopped feeling like an argument and started feeling permanent. This hadn't been a fight. They had planned it. They'd changed the locks while I was at school. They'd packed my room while I was in history class taking notes on the Cold War. I tried the handle again anyway, just in case. Locked. 2 weeks earlier, my mom had found the Army brochures in my backpack. She'd laid them out on the kitchen table like evidence in a crime scene. My dad asked if I thought I was too good for community college. I told them I wanted structure, stability, a way to pay for school later. They heard escape. "Military is for kids who don't have options," my dad said that night. I didn't answer. I did have options. They just didn't include staying in that house forever. Now I was sitting outside it with 3 trash bags and a dying phone. I texted my mom, "Please, I'll stay out of the way. I just need tonight." No reply. The front curtain moved slightly. I don't know if she was looking at me or just checking the weather. Either way, the curtain dropped back into place. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez stepped out to check her mail. She looked at me, then at the bags, then back at me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded automatically. "Yeah." She raised an eyebrow. "You don't look okay." I didn't have a better lie ready. She crossed the street without waiting for permission. "You can't sit out here." I told her it was a misunderstanding. She glanced at the locked door and the bags. "That's a lot of misunderstanding." She offered her couch. "Just for the night," she said. She didn't push. She didn't ask for details. She just grabbed one of the bags and carried it like it weighed nothing. Inside her apartment, everything smelled like laundry detergent and whatever she had cooking in a slow cooker. Normal. Warm. My phone hit 1% before she found a charger. "How old are you?" she asked. 17. Her jaw tightened. "That's not how this works." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just sat at her kitchen table and watched my phone climb from 1% to 2. That night I lay on her couch staring at the ceiling fan. I kept replaying the sound of the lock. I wasn't shocked anymore. I was calculating. I had 2 months until graduation. I was already in the delayed entry program. My ship date wasn't set yet, but it would be soon after school ended. I needed my diploma. I needed a place to sleep. I needed to not get arrested for trespassing at my own house. The next morning at school, I went straight to the guidance office before first period. The same office where I'd met the recruiter. Mrs. Carter, the counselor, took one look at me and closed the door. "Tell me what happened." I told her about the locks, the trash bags, the "don't come back." She didn't interrupt. She didn't look shocked. She looked focused. She pulled a folder from her cabinet and started writing things down. "You're still a minor," she said. "They can't just put you out." I didn't correct her. They already had. She mentioned something called the McKinney-Vento Act. I had never heard of it. Apparently, schools have procedures for students who lose housing. Apparently, this happens more than people think. By third period, the vice principal knew. By lunch, someone had contacted Child Protective Services. I texted my mom again. "The school is involved now." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No message. That afternoon, CPS went to the house. I wasn't there when they knocked. I was in algebra pretending to understand quadratic equations, while my entire life sat in 3 trash bags across the street from where I'd grown up. Later, Mrs. Carter called me back into her office. She closed the door again. "They're claiming you left on your own," she said calmly. I almost laughed. I pictured myself dragging 3 full trash bags down the driveway for dramatic effect. "They changed the locks," she continued. "That's not leaving on your own." My stomach tightened, but not from fear this time. From something steadier. For the first time since 3:47 p.m., the day before, I realized this wasn't just about being locked out. It was about who had the power to decide where I belonged. And that argument wasn't over. I kept staring at the counselor's desk, waiting for someone to tell me this was all a misunderstanding. Mrs. Carter didn't look confused. She looked efficient. She had a legal pad open, my name written at the top in neat block letters. She asked direct questions. When was the lock changed? Were my belongings inside the house that morning? Had I been told not to return? I answered yes, yes, and yes. "They can't deny you access to the home while you're still a minor," she said, "especially not by changing the locks." I thought about the new deadbolt. Shiny, polished, installed while I was in government class. By the end of the school day, the situation had a case number. CPS contacted my parents that afternoon. I wasn't present, but I heard the summary later. My dad told them I had stormed out after an argument. My mom said I was dramatic and had threatened to leave anyway. They made it sound like I'd packed the trash bags myself out of spite. There's something about adults using calm voices that makes a lie sound official. The CPS worker asked about the locks. My dad said he'd replaced them weeks ago for security reasons. The worker asked why my clothes were outside in tied bags. My mom said I had been organizing. That part almost impressed me. By 5 o'clock, the CPS worker had asked to see the house. She noted the brand new lock hardware. She noted the 3 trash bags still sitting by the door. She noted that I was 17 and enrolled full-time in high school. By 6, I was told I would be allowed back into the house. Allowed. Mrs. Alvarez drove me home that evening. The sun was starting to set. The trash bags were no longer outside. That was the first thing I noticed. The driveway looked normal again, like the house had swallowed the evidence. The door opened before I knocked. My dad stepped aside without speaking. The air inside felt colder than it had the day before. The new lock was still there. My mom stood in the kitchen, arms folded. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked irritated. "You happy?" she asked. I didn't answer. I carried the trash bags down the hallway to my room. The carpet felt unfamiliar under my shoes, like I was walking through someone else's house. My bedroom door was open. The room looked the same, except everything was gone from the dresser. The mattress was bare. The closet hung empty. They had stripped it completely. I set the trash bags on the floor and started unpacking. Not because I wanted to, because I needed the space. Halfway through, my mom appeared in the doorway. "You embarrassed us," she said. "Do you know how that looks? Having CPS show up." I kept folding clothes. "You could have handled this privately," she added. Privately would have meant sleeping on a curb. My dad leaned against the hallway wall. "You think you're grown now? Then start contributing. Groceries aren't free." I nodded once, not in agreement, just acknowledgement. I was done debating logic with people who had already decided they were right. Dinner that night was silent. 2 plates at the table. Mine wasn't one of them. There was a note on the fridge the next morning. If you're staying here, you're paying for your food. Under it, my mom had written a dollar amount. It wasn't outrageous. It was just deliberate. The Wi-Fi password stopped working that afternoon. When I asked about it, my dad said data plans exist. The message was clear. I wasn't being kicked out again. I was being squeezed. I adjusted. I picked up extra shifts at the grocery store where I worked weekends. I opened a checking account in my own name. I kept my documents, birth certificate, social security card, in a small folder inside my backpack instead of the house. Every interaction became transactional. If I used the stove, my mom reminded me to wipe it down. If I turned on the lights, my dad commented on the electric bill. The camera in the living room, something they'd installed the year before for security, now felt pointed in my direction more often than not. 2 weeks after CPS intervened, they scheduled a follow-up visit. This time my parents were ready. The house was spotless. The fridge was full. My bed was made. The trash bags were gone. My mom offered the caseworker coffee. When I was asked if I felt safe, I said yes, because technically I did. No one was hitting me. No one was threatening me. They were just waiting. That night after the caseworker left, my dad stood in the doorway of my room. "You think you won something?" he asked quietly. "You didn't." I looked up from my laptop. "You're 18 in 2 months," he continued. "When that happens, we're done. No court, no caseworker, no rules." There it was. The real deadline. My birthday had always just been a date. Now it was a countdown. At school, Mrs. Carter helped me fill out additional forms for housing support just in case. She asked about my enlistment timeline. I told her I was in the delayed entry program and planned to ship out shortly after graduation. She nodded. "Then your goal is simple. Finish strong." That became my focus. At home, I moved like a guest. I kept my door closed. I kept my head down. I tracked every dollar I earned. I stopped reacting to comments designed to get one. The day I turned 18, there was no cake, no card, no acknowledgement. There was an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside was a typed notice. 30 days. No explanation. No discussion. Just a date circled in red ink. I read it twice and placed it back in the envelope. My dad watched from the living room. "Don't act surprised," he said. "We told you." He wasn't wrong. They had. I walked back to my room and closed the door carefully. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just closed. The lock on my bedroom door still worked. For now. I sat on the edge of my bed and did the math. 30 days until I was officially out. Graduation was in 3 weeks. My ship date hadn't been finalized yet, but my recruiter had mentioned early summer. The timing could work, if I stayed focused. If I didn't give them a reason to speed up the eviction. If I kept my grades steady. That night I emailed my recruiter. He responded within the hour. "We can move your ship date up." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yes. I hit send before I could second guess it. The recruiter called the next afternoon during my shift at the grocery store. I stepped outside to take it. "We can move you to an earlier basic training slot," he said. "You'd ship 2 weeks after graduation instead of late summer." That work? It worked too well. Yes, I told him. That works. There were forms to update. A quick meeting at the recruiting office. Nothing dramatic. No secret handshakes. Just paperwork and a date on a screen. When I walked back into the house that night, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table going over bills. The envelope with my 30-day notice was still there like a centerpiece. "I moved my ship date up," I said. My mom didn't look up. "Ship date. For the Army." My dad leaned back in his chair. "You really think this is going to fix your attitude?" I shrugged. "It's not about my attitude." He laughed under his breath. "You won't last." That sentence had become his favorite hobby. I didn't argue. I went to my room and started making a list. What I needed to pack. What I needed to leave. What I needed to cancel. For the first time since the locks were changed, the clock felt like it was working for me. Graduation came faster than I expected. I walked across the stage in a borrowed cap and gown. My name was called. I shook the principal's hand. I scanned the crowd out of habit. 2 empty seats. Mrs. Alvarez clapped loud enough for 3 people. That was enough. Back at the house, nothing had changed. The camera still blinked in the living room. The Wi-Fi password still didn't work. My mom still labeled groceries with her name in black marker like we were roommates who didn't trust each other. I kept working shifts. I saved every dollar I could. I sold my old gaming console online. I canceled my streaming subscriptions. I learned how to live small. The week before my ship date, my recruiter met me at the office to review final instructions. Fort Jackson, he said. You'll report here, then bust down. Don't bring anything you don't need. Basic training isn't summer camp. I figured. He looked at my paperwork. Family coming to see you off? No. He didn't ask more. Recruiters see enough versions of that answer. The night before I left, I packed 2 small duffel bags. The rest of my stuff fit into one plastic storage bin that I planned to leave with Mrs. Alvarez. I didn't need much. A few clothes, my documents, a pair of running shoes. I carried the duffels into the hallway just before sunrise. My parents were already awake. My dad sat in his recliner watching the morning news. My mom stood at the counter pouring coffee. You're really doing this, my dad said. Yeah. He shook his head slowly. Don't call when it gets hard. I almost laughed. Hard had already happened. I won't. My mom finally looked at me. You think they care about you over there? You're just a number. I adjusted the strap on my bag. That's fine. Numbers get paid. Silence. I picked up my duffels and walked out the front door. The new lock glinted in the early light. For a second, I considered slamming it just to make a point. I didn't. Mrs. Alvarez drove me to the recruiting station. She didn't try to give a speech. She just squeezed my shoulder before I got out of the car. Call me when you can, she said. The bus ride to Fort Jackson was long and quiet. A handful of us sat scattered through the seats, trying to look tougher than we felt. No one talked much. Everyone pretended their phones were more interesting than their thoughts. When we arrived, the yelling started almost immediately. Drill sergeants moved us in lines. Bags dumped. Phones collected. Instructions rapid fire and loud. Move faster. Stand straight. Eyes forward. It was controlled chaos. And strangely, it made sense. Every command had a purpose. Every step had a reason. No hidden cameras. No passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. That first night of the barracks, I lay on a narrow bunk staring at the ceiling. 40 other women breathing in the dark. No one cared why I was there. No one asked about locks or trash bags. The schedule began at 04:30. The first PT session nearly broke me. I had run before. I thought I was in decent shape. I was wrong. By the second lap, my lungs felt like they were shrinking. My legs burned. A drill sergeant paced beside us, voice steady and unimpressed. You don't quit because you're tired. You quit because you decide to. I didn't quit. I just finished last. Week 1 blurred into week 2. Early mornings. Push-ups, drill practice, endless repetition. My hands blistered from rifle drills. My shoulders ached from carrying gear. I wrote one short letter to Mrs. Alvarez during mail call. Nothing dramatic, just that I was fine. By week 3, we had our first PT assessment. I failed the runtime by 12 seconds. 12 seconds felt like an hour. The drill sergeant didn't yell. That was worse. You have one retest, she said. Decide what you want. That night I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. This time it wasn't the yelling that kept me up. It was the idea of proving my dad right. You won't last. I got up before lights out officially ended and stretched in the hallway. I ran in place quietly. I counted breaths instead of excuses. Retest day came fast. The track felt longer than it had the week before. My legs started to tighten at the same spot. My lungs burned at the same curve. I didn't look at the clock. I crossed the line and bent over, hands on knees, waiting for the numbers. The drill sergeant glanced at her watch. Pass, she said. Not impressive. Not outstanding. Just pass. It was enough. For the first time since 3:47 p.m. on that Tuesday, I felt something steady settle into place. Not anger, not relief, just a quiet understanding that surviving was a skill, and I was getting better at it. I stopped counting the days and started counting the standards. Basic training didn't get easier after that PT retest. It just became predictable. Wake up in the dark. Make the bed tight enough to bounce a coin. Move when told. Stop when told. Speak when spoken to. It wasn't personal. It was consistent. Consistency felt new. By week 5, my body adjusted. My run time improved. My push-ups stopped shaking halfway through. I wasn't leading the pack, but I wasn't dragging it either. In the Army, average done well is better than dramatic failure. Rifle qualification week arrived with heat that didn't care where you were from. South Carolina in summer doesn't ease you in. It tests you immediately. We learned positions, breathing control, trigger squeeze. The first time I fired the recoil surprised me. The second time it didn't. On qualification day, I hit enough targets to pass cleanly. Not expert, not embarrassing, solid. The drill sergeant gave a short nod and moved on to the next trainee. That nod mattered more than any speech. Mail call came twice a week. Some women got stacks of letters, photos, care packages. I got one envelope from Mrs. Alvarez and nothing else. She wrote about her tomato plants and the neighbor's new dog. She ended with, "Proud of you." 2 words. That was enough. My parents didn't write. I didn't expect them to. Graduation day at Fort Jackson was brief and controlled. We stood in formation under a wide sky, families scattered in folding chairs. I scanned the crowd once out of habit. No familiar faces. I didn't feel disappointed, just accurate. After the ceremony, I packed my issued gear and prepared to transfer to AIT for my MOS 25B Information Technology Specialist. Computers made sense to me. They followed logic. You input something wrong, you got an error message. At least it was honest. AIT felt different from basic. Less shouting, more instruction. We were still soldiers, but now we were students again, learning networking basics, hardware, troubleshooting security protocols. The classroom smelled like plastic and cleaning spray instead of gun oil. I wasn't the smartest in the room. A few trainees had been building PCs since middle school. I asked questions anyway. I stayed after class to review material. I didn't want to be exceptional. I wanted to be dependable. During one lab exercise, I misconfigured a network setup and locked myself out of the system. The instructor raised an eyebrow. "You do that in the real world. Someone's calling you at 2 a.m. "Good," I said. "I'm usually awake." He almost smiled. Halfway through AIT, we received our first real paychecks that felt steady. Not grocery store shifts. Not part-time cash. Direct deposit from the U.S. Army. I opened my banking app and stared at the balance like it might disappear. I paid off the small credit card balance I'd carried from buying running shoes and bus tickets back home. I set up automatic savings. No one had to tell me to. Stability isn't exciting. It's quiet. When orders came down, I was assigned to Fort Liberty. North Carolina again, just a different post. I packed my duffel and boarded another bus. My first unit was a mix of specialists and sergeants who had seen deployments and paperwork in equal measure. The motor pool wasn't glamorous. The offices weren't shiny. The work was steady, maintaining systems, troubleshooting connectivity, updating equipment inventories. The barracks room was small but mine. 2 beds, 2 wall lockers, 1 roommate who kept her side spotless and minded her business. I could lock the door from the inside. That detail never stopped feeling significant. The first few months were adjustment. New chain of command, new expectations. PT at 0630 sharp. Uniform inspections. Weekend duty rotations. No one cared about my past. They cared about whether I showed up on time and knew my job. I did. I volunteered for extra training courses. Not to impress anyone, to stay useful. I improved my runtime again. I passed my next Army combat fitness test without stress. Small wins stacked quietly. One afternoon, my squad leader called me into his office. "You've been consistent," he said. "Keep that up." Consistency. There was that word again. At the end of my first year, I moved out of the barracks and into a small off-post apartment with another soldier from my section. The place wasn't impressive. Beige walls, thin carpet, a fridge that hummed too loud at night. But the lease had my name on it. I signed it without hesitation. The first evening there, I stood inside the doorway for a moment before unpacking. No cameras, no labeled groceries, no envelope with a deadline. Just rent due on the first and utilities in my name. I bought a basic couch from a thrift store. A small table, 2 chairs. I learned how to budget properly because if I didn't, no one else would fix it. I made mistakes. Ordered takeout too often one month. Overestimated my savings another. Adjusted. Promotion boards came and went. I studied for mine. Regulations, leadership questions, Army values. When I pinned specialist, it wasn't dramatic. Just a small ceremony in front of the platoon. The rank felt heavier than it looked. Somewhere in that second year, I realized something had shifted. The anger that used to sit just under my skin had faded. Not disappeared, just quieted. I didn't need my parents to admit anything. I didn't need them to apologize. I was too busy building something that worked without them. On weekends, I sometimes checked social media. My mom posted photos of family dinners. My dad commented on local sports. Nothing about me, nothing about the Army. That was fine. 4 years passed faster than high school ever did. I re-enlisted for stability, took additional certifications, picked up sergeant after meeting the time in service and time in grade requirements. The promotion came with more responsibility and fewer excuses. I trained younger soldiers now. Some of them arrived with the same look I'd had on that bus to basic, trying not to show uncertainty. Focus on the standard, I told one private who was struggling with PT, not the noise. He nodded like he understood. One evening, after a long day of equipment checks and paperwork, I drove back to my apartment and checked the mail. Bills, a flyer, and one envelope with my parents' return address in the corner. I stood there for a second, keys in one hand, envelope in the other. Then I unlocked my door and went inside. I set the envelope on the kitchen counter and washed my hands like it might smear. It was plain. No dramatic handwriting, just my name and address written in my mother's careful print. For a second, I considered throwing it away unopened. Curiosity won. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Your father's been having some health issues. Work's been slow. We could use some help. No greeting, no apology, no acknowledgement of anything that had happened years earlier. Just an update and a request wrapped in polite wording that left out every uncomfortable detail. I read it twice. The letter didn't say what kind of help. It didn't say how serious the health issues were. It didn't say why I was the person they had decided to contact. I folded it back along the original crease and leaned against the counter. 4 years ago, they told me not to come back. Now they had my address. I checked the postmark, Ohio. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account out of habit. Savings looked steady. Emergency fund intact. No debt except my car loan, which was on track. I could send money. It wouldn't ruin me. That wasn't the point. The next morning at PT, I didn't mention the letter. We ran intervals on the track and I focused on my breathing. Inhale, exhale. Standards don't change just because something uncomfortable shows up in your mailbox. Later that day, my phone rang during lunch. The caller ID showed my dad's number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. Got your address from your aunt. Call me. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before locking it. My squad leader walked past my desk. You look like someone just gave you extra duty, he said. Family, I replied. He nodded once. That'll do it. That evening, I listened to the voicemail in my apartment with the door locked and the TV off. My dad's voice sounded older. Slower. Hey, it's me. Listen, things are tight right now. The company cut hours. My back's still not great. We're just asking for a little help. You're doing well. We see it online. Online. They hadn't called when I graduated basic. They hadn't called when I pinned specialist. But they had noticed the photos from my promotion ceremony last month. I sat down at the table and called him back. He picked up on the second ring. Olivia. Yeah. He cleared his throat. Your mom wrote you. We didn't know if you'd respond. I read it. There was a pause like he was waiting for something warmer. We just need a little assistance, he said. Mortgage got adjusted. Medical bills. It adds up. How much, I asked. Another pause. 5,000 would cover the immediate stuff. 5,000 wasn't a random number. It was specific enough to sound calculated. I don't have 5,000 sitting around, I said, which was technically true. It was in savings allocated for stability, not bailouts. You're in the Army, he replied. You get housing allowance. Steady pay. You're not struggling. The confidence in his voice surprised me. You told me not to come back, I said. Silence. That was different, he answered finally. You were being difficult. I leaned back in my chair. I was 17. He exhaled sharply. We did what we thought was right. And this, I asked. What is this? This is family helping each other. There it was again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I asked for details instead. What hospital? What lender? What assistance programs they had applied for? He seemed irritated by the questions. We're not asking for paperwork. We're asking for help. I need specifics, I said. The call ended without resolution. Not angry, just unfinished. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I felt guilty, because I was thinking strategically. The Army had taught me to assess situations before reacting. Identify the problem. Evaluate resources. Choose a course of action. The next day, I used my lunch break to research housing assistance programs in their county, state unemployment extensions, medical payment plans. I made a list of phone numbers and websites. I typed up an email. I'm not in a position to send money. Here are some programs that might help. Let me know if you need contact information for the county office. I read it 3 times to make sure there was no sarcasm hiding between the lines. Just information. I hit send. The reply came within an hour. So you're not helping? It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. That evening, I stayed late at work finishing system updates. One of the younger soldiers lingered by my desk. Sergeant, you ever feel like your family doesn't get what you're doing here? He asked. I looked at him for a second. Sometimes, I said, that's not your problem to fix. He nodded slowly. When I got home, there was another voicemail. You've changed, my mom said. The Army made you cold. I almost laughed. The Army had made me disciplined. There's a difference. I deleted the voicemail and went to the gym instead. Over the next few weeks, the messages continued. Not daily, not desperate, just steady. Updates about bills, mentions of foreclosure notices, subtle reminders that I was their daughter. I responded once more with a short message. I can't send money. I hope you find a solution. After that, I stopped replying. Work didn't slow down. Equipment audits, training rotations, counseling sessions for junior soldiers. I focused on what was in front of me. One afternoon, my aunt called. They're really struggling, she said. Your dad's pride won't let him say how bad. I gave them resources, I replied. She sighed. They're embarrassed. I didn't comment. Embarrassment had not stopped them from changing the locks. I ended the call politely and drove back to my apartment. The lease was up for renewal in 3 months. I had been considering moving somewhere larger, maybe even looking into using my VA loan benefits eventually. Stability had turned into something else. Ownership. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. My phone buzzed again. Another message from home. We might lose the house. I set the phone down without opening it and started reviewing my budget spreadsheet instead. I closed the budget spreadsheet and went for a run instead. There's something about moving forward physically that keeps your head from circling the same thought. The air outside my apartment was thick and humid, typical North Carolina evening. I set a steady pace and focused on cadence. Left, right, breathe. We might lose the house. The message sat unread on my phone inside. I already knew what it said. Foreclosure isn't subtle. It builds over months. Missed payments, warning letters, final notices. It doesn't happen overnight. Neither did what they did to me. The next morning at formation, I pushed the thought aside and did my job. We had a systems update across multiple offices. Half the computers weren't cooperating. Soldiers were frustrated. Someone always forgets their password right when you're on a deadline. Sergeant Bennett, one of the specialists, called out, "This one won't connect." I walked over, checked the cable reset. The configuration reran the script. Try now. It worked. Consistency. Fix what's in front of you. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time I answered. What's going on? I asked. My dad didn't waste time. We're behind. The bank sent another notice. We just need a loan. Not a handout. We'll pay you back. A loan. How? I asked. With what income? He didn't like that. I'm picking up shifts where I can. Your mom's working more hours. And the medical bills. Payment plan. There was irritation under his voice now. You have savings, he said. Don't pretend you don't. I leaned back in my chair at work and looked at the wall. A framed copy of the Army values hung there. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor. integrity, personal courage. None of them required me to undo someone else's decisions. I'm not sending money, I said calmly. You're really going to watch us lose the house. I thought about the day they watched me sit on the curb next to 3 trash bags. I'm not watching anything, I replied. I'm doing my job. The line went quiet. You've changed, he said again. No, I answered. I grew up. He hung up first. That evening, I met with my financial counselor on base. Not because I was tempted to send money, but because I wanted clarity. We reviewed my savings, my TSP contributions, my car loan timeline. Everything was steady. You're in good shape, she said. Thinking about buying, maybe I admitted. In a year or two, she nodded. A loan's a solid option when you're ready. Ready. That word carried weight. Over the next few weeks, messages from my parents became shorter, more pointed. The bank won't wait. You're our daughter. Family helps family. I responded once with the same list of county resources I'd already sent. After that, I stopped replying altogether. Work filled the space. I ran squad PT 3 mornings a week. I corrected a private who kept showing up late. I reviewed counseling statements. I studied for an advanced certification course in network security. The more structured my days were, the less room there was for guilt to grow. One Saturday, I drove past a real estate office near my apartment complex. Listings were posted in the window. Modest houses, nothing flashy, lawns that needed mowing, brick exteriors, starter homes. I parked and went inside. The realtor looked surprised to see someone in uniform. Just browsing, I said. She handed me a brochure about VA loan eligibility. No pressure, just information. I took it home and placed it next to the letter from my parents, which I still hadn't thrown away. 2 paths, one backward, one forward. A week later, my aunt called again. They're talking about selling before the bank takes it, she said. They thought maybe you'd reconsider. I haven't reconsidered, I replied. You don't feel bad. The question wasn't accusing, just curious. I feel clear, I said. There was a long pause on the other end. They say you're cold. I'm consistent. After we hung up, I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet. My duffel from basic training still sat on the top shelf. I pulled it down and unzipped it. Inside were the running shoes I'd worn during that first failed PT test. I held one for a second, then put it back. Surviving is a skill. Maintaining is another. At work the following Monday, my commander announced upcoming field training exercises. Extended hours, less sleep, more responsibility. I volunteered to coordinate communications. You sure, my squad leader asked? Yes, Sergeant. The field exercise lasted 10 days. Mud, rain, equipment that didn't want to cooperate, soldiers who wanted to complain but didn't. In the middle of it, during a rare quiet moment, my phone buzzed with weak reception. Foreclosure date set. I read it once and put the phone back in my pocket. There was nothing tactical about sending money in the middle of a field problem. There was nothing logical about derailing my own stability for a situation I hadn't created. When we returned to base exhausted and filthy, I drove straight to the realtor's office. I'd like to look at something modest, I said. Nothing fancy. She smiled. Budget. I gave her a number that didn't require heroics. We toured 3 houses that afternoon. The first smelled like old carpet. The second needed too much work. The third was small but solid. 2 bedrooms, clean kitchen, quiet street. I stood in the doorway for a moment. The lock on the front door was standard issue. Nothing special. It turned smoothly when the realtor tested it. You thinking about it? She asked. I nodded slowly. That night my phone buzzed again. The house is going up for sale. I set the phone face down on the table and picked up the VA loan brochure instead. I scheduled the home inspection the next morning before I could talk myself out of it. The house wasn't impressive. That's what I liked about it. No dramatic staircase. No oversized windows pretending to be luxury. Just brick, a small porch, and a yard that would need mowing every week in the summer. Predictable maintenance. Manageable responsibility. The inspector walked through, slowly checking outlets, roof shingles, plumbing lines. I followed behind him, taking notes like I was studying for another certification exam. Foundation solid, he said. Roof's got some years left. Nothing major. Nothing major felt like a gift. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again, my dad's number. I let it ring once before answering. We listed the house, he said without greeting. Bank's pushing. How much do you owe? More than we'll get. There was no anger in his voice this time, just flatness. "You sure you can't help?" he asked. "Even co-sign something?" "No." A long exhale. "You're really going to let this happen? I didn't cause it. You could stop it." I thought about that. The idea that money equals control. That sending $5,000 would somehow rewind years of choices. "I won't," I said. Silence. "You used to be different." I kept my voice steady. "You used to have the keys." He hung up. That evening I signed the offer paperwork. The realtor slid the documents across the desk. My name looked unfamiliar in print next to the word buyer. "Congratulations," she said. "We'll see what the seller says." At PT the next morning, I pushed harder than usual. Not out of anger, out of focus. Deadlifts, sprints, sweat soaking through my shirt. Physical effort clears mental noise. My squad leader noticed. "Something on your mind." "Buying a house," I said. He nodded approvingly. "That's smart. Don't overextend." "I won't." 3 days later, the seller accepted. The mortgage process moved quickly with the VA loan. Appraisal scheduled. Underwriting reviewed my income credit service record. Everything clean. No late payments. No debt surprises. Stability isn't flashy, but lenders like it. In the middle of all that, my mom called. I answered this time. "We might need somewhere to stay," she said. "Just temporarily, until we figure things out." There it was. The line I'd been expecting. "I don't have space," I replied. "That's not true. You have a place off base. It's a 2-bedroom rental with a roommate." She didn't pause. "When you move, you'll have room." The assumption landed hard, like it was already decided. "I'm not offering my house," I said. "You'd really shut your parents out." I let that sit for a second. "You told me not to come back," I said. I listened. "You're holding a grudge." "No," I answered. "I'm holding a boundary." Her voice shifted from defensive to sharp. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you. You packed my clothes in trash bags." Silence. "You were disrespectful," she said finally. I was 17. The call ended without resolution. No yelling, just distance. Closing day arrived on a humid Thursday morning. I took leave for it. Sat at a long table in a small office with a stack of papers that seemed taller than necessary. Initial here. Sign there. Confirm this. When the notary slid the final document toward me, I paused. The realtor smiled. "Last one." I signed. The keys were simple. 2 metal copies on a plain ring. I drove straight to the house. It was empty inside. The echo of my footsteps bounced off the bare walls. No furniture, no boxes, just space. I walked from room to room slowly. Kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms, 1 small bathroom. Everything modest, everything mine. At the front door, I tested the lock. It turned smoothly. I locked it from the inside and stood there for a second. The phone buzzed in my pocket. "House sold. We're moving out next week." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the windows to let fresh air in. I made a list of what I needed: a bed, a couch, basic kitchen supplies. Nothing expensive, nothing dramatic. Over the next few days, I moved in piece by piece. A mattress on the floor at first. A used dining table from a thrift store. Curtains that didn't quite match but did the job. The first night I slept there, the house made small noises. Pipes settling, wood adjusting. Normal sounds. No footsteps outside my door. No arguments in the kitchen. No envelope on the counter. The following week, my aunt sent a short message. "They're staying with friends for now." I read it and put the phone down. At work, life didn't slow down. Equipment checks. Training briefs. A counseling session with a private who kept missing deadlines. I focused on what was in front of me. One afternoon during a lull between tasks, my phone lit up again. "Can we come see you?" It wasn't phrased as a demand, just a question. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. No, I didn't explain. That evening I installed a simple security system in the house. Not because I expected trouble, because I liked knowing who had access. I programmed the code, tested the alarm, locked the door. The click was solid and final. The alarm keypad blinked green as I set the code and stepped back. Ownership changes how you move. You check hinges. You notice cracks in the driveway. You care about things you used to walk past. 3 days after I moved in fully, my phone rang during lunch. Unknown number. Local area code from back home. I answered. Olivia. It was my dad. "We're in town," he said. My grip tightened on the phone. "Why?" "We drove down. Thought we could talk." I didn't tell him that talking had never been the issue. Where are you staying? I asked. With a friend of a friend. It's temporary. Temporary. That word had done a lot of work in my life. I'm not hosting, I said. We're not asking to move in, he replied quickly. Just want to see you. I looked around the motor pool soldiers moving between vehicles. Someone arguing about missing equipment. You can meet somewhere public, I said finally. There was a pause. Fine. We chose a coffee shop 10 minutes from my house. Neutral ground. Bright lighting. Plenty of witnesses. I arrived early, sat near the window, ordered black coffee. My uniform was pressed. My name tape sat clean across my chest. They walked in together. They looked older, smaller somehow. My dad's posture had changed. He moved carefully like his back limited him more than he wanted to admit. My mom's hair had more gray than I remembered. For a second, none of us spoke. You look good, my mom said. I'm fine. We sat down. My dad glanced at my uniform. Sergeant now. Yes, that's impressive. It wasn't pride in his voice. It was assessment. My mom folded her hands on the table. We're trying to figure things out. The house sold. We didn't get much after fees. We're staying with friends, but that can't last. I nodded once. We thought maybe she continued carefully until we get back on our feet. No, I said. She blinked. You didn't even let me finish. I know what you're asking. My dad leaned forward. It's temporary. So was me sleeping on a couch at 17. The words landed between us. No one raised their voice. That was different, my mom said again. It wasn't. A barista called out an order behind us. The noise of the shop filled the silence. We made mistakes, my dad said finally. That was new. I didn't react. I waited. We were overwhelmed, he added. Bill's stress. You were pushing back. We didn't handle it right. Not an apology, but closer than anything before. You changed the locks, I said. He nodded once. My mom looked down at the table. We didn't think you'd actually leave like that, she said. You told me not to come back. She swallowed. We were angry. I was 17. The repetition wasn't dramatic. It was factual. My dad shifted in his chair. We're not asking for money. Just a place to regroup. You're asking for access, I said. That's different. They didn't argue that. For a moment, I considered what it would look like. Their boxes in my spare bedroom. Their voices in my kitchen. My alarm code changed to accommodate them. The thought tightened my chest. I can send you information on extended stay rentals, I said. There are programs for seniors dealing with foreclosure. I already looked them up. You already looked, my mom asked. Yes. You plan to say no. I plan to be consistent. My dad rubbed his hands together slowly. You don't trust us. No. That one didn't require explanation. My mom's eyes watered, but no tears fell. We're your parents. You were. The sentence came out calm, not sharp. They sat back. You're cold, she said quietly. I'm clear. The meeting lasted another 10 minutes. Logistics, surface-level updates, nothing personal. When we stood up, my dad hesitated like he might hug me. He didn't. Outside in the parking lot, he turned once. We did the best we could, he said. So did I replied. I drove home slowly. Not shaken, not triumphant, just steady. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked the same as it had that morning. Brick, porch, quiet street. I parked, stepped out, and unlocked the front door. Inside, everything was where I left it. No one had touched the counters. No one had rearranged the furniture. I set my keys on the table and checked the alarm log out of habit. No entries. My phone buzzed with the text from my aunt. How did it go? I typed back one word. Clear. That evening, I mowed the lawn for the first time. The rhythm of it was simple. Straight lines. Even passes. Grass cut clean. At some point during the third pass, I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting for them to understand. I wasn't hoping for anything different. I finished the yard, rolled the mower back into the garage, and closed the door. The latch clicked into place. I wiped the grass off my boots and sat on the porch steps until the sun dropped behind the houses across the street. The meeting at the coffee shop replayed in short clips. Not dramatic, just factual. They looked tired, smaller, less certain than I remembered. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like gravity. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time it was my mom. I answered while reviewing training schedules at the kitchen table. We found a short-term rental, she said. No greeting. It's expensive. I sent you options, I replied. We looked at them, and they're not ideal. I almost smiled at that. Ideal hadn't been an option for me either. She hesitated. Your father's back is worse than we thought. He can't stand for long shifts. Has he filed for disability? He doesn't want to. That's not my decision. There was a pause on the line. I could hear movement in the background. A TV, maybe. Or traffic. We keep thinking about that day, she said. When you were outside. I didn't respond immediately. We were angry, she continued. We thought if we scared you, you'd fall in line. Fall in line. I looked at the rank on my chest, reflected faintly in the dark screen of my laptop. You didn't scare me, I said. You removed yourselves. Silence. We didn't think you'd choose the army over us. I didn't choose the army over you, I replied. You chose not to be an option. She let that sit. We're trying, she said finally. Then keep trying, I answered. The call ended without a request this time. That evening, I met with a junior soldier who was struggling with family pressure of his own. His parents wanted him to leave the army and come home to help with their business. They say I owe them, he said. You don't owe anyone your future, I told him. You can help if you want. Not because you're cornered. He nodded, slowly absorbing it. Advice is easier to give when you've tested it yourself. A week later, my dad sent a text. We sold most of the furniture. I stared at it for a moment. Furniture goes. The structure remains. Then another message. Might move closer to you. More job options. I read that one twice. I responded carefully. Moving won't change my boundaries. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. No reply. Work continued. Field exercises. Equipment checks. Counseling statements. I enrolled in an online course using my GI Bill benefits to build toward a cybersecurity certification. Nights were structured. Mornings were early. Routine makes space for stability. One Saturday, I drove back to my hometown to handle a minor paperwork issue related to an old bank account that had my name attached from high school. The courthouse parking lot looked smaller than I remembered. As I walked toward the entrance, I saw them. My parents stood near the steps, holding a folder between them. They looked surprised to see me. You're here, my dad asked. Paperwork. They nodded. We're finalizing some things, my mom said. Last of the house documents. We stood there for a second, 3 people connected by history and very little else. You look well, my dad said. I am. He adjusted the folder in his hands. We didn't expect things to go this way. No one does, I replied. My mom looked at me carefully. Do you hate us? The question didn't feel manipulative. It felt uncertain. No, I said. Then why won't you help? I considered that. Because helping would mean pretending nothing happened. They didn't argue. We thought my dad began slowly that you'd need us. I did, I said. When I was 17. That landed harder than anything else I'd said. My mom's shoulders dropped slightly. We can't change it, she said. No. There was no yelling. No public scene. Just acknowledgement in a courthouse parking lot. My dad shifted his weight again, clearly uncomfortable. We're looking at an apartment, he said. Small one. Affordable. That's good. You don't care where we end up. I care that you're stable, I replied. I don't control how you get there. We walked toward the building together, not side by side, but close enough that it looked intentional. Inside paperwork moved faster than emotion. Sign here, initial there. Documents stamped and filed. Systems operate whether people are ready or not. When we stepped back outside, my mom hesitated. We really did try, she said. I know, I answered. It was the first time I meant that. Trying doesn't erase impact, but it explains it. My dad gave a short nod. You built something, he said. Yes, without us. Yes. He didn't argue that either. We stood there one last time before parting ways. No hugs, no dramatic gestures. Just a mutual understanding that the shape of our relationship had changed permanently. I drove back to my house that evening as the sun lowered over the highway. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a minute before stepping out. The porch light clicked on automatically. I walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and went inside. I locked the door behind me and set my keys on the table without thinking about it. The motion had become automatic. Turn the key, check the handle, set the alarm. Routine isn't dramatic, it's protective. The house smelled like fresh paint and cut grass. I'd finally gotten around to repainting the spare bedroom the weekend before. Neutral color. Nothing bold. Just clean. I changed out of my uniform and made a simple dinner. Chicken, rice, vegetables. The kind of meal that doesn't require emotional investment. While the rice cooked, I checked my email. Work updates. Course notifications. Nothing from my parents. That was new. The last few weeks had been quiet. No urgent texts, no late-night calls. My aunt had sent a short message saying they signed a lease on a small apartment outside of town. Affordable, manageable. Good. At PT the next morning, I led the formation through intervals. One of the newer soldiers struggled to keep pace. I slowed slightly without making a show of it. "Stay with me," I told her. She nodded, breathing hard. Back in the office later that day, I finalized paperwork for a soldier's leave request. His reason, family emergency. I signed it without hesitation. Family doesn't stop being complicated just because you put on a uniform. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and reviewed my finances again. Mortgage payments scheduled. Utilities automatic. Savings steady. My credit score had ticked up another few points. Progress doesn't make noise. It shows up in numbers and habits. My phone buzzed once. A text from my mom. "We're settled. It's small, but it's ours." I read it twice. That sentence carried more weight than she probably realized. "Small, but it's ours," I typed back. "That's good." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "We've been thinking a lot." I waited. About how we handled things. I didn't fill in the silence. We were wrong to change the locks. There it was. Not polished, not dramatic, just direct. I set the phone down for a moment and let that sit in the quiet kitchen. "Thank you for saying that," I typed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement. A minute later, another message came through. "We didn't think you'd make it." I looked around my house. The table, the couch, the framed certificate from my latest certification course on the wall. "I made it," I replied. No extra words. The next few days passed without tension. Work, gym, grocery store, lawn maintenance, ordinary life. On Saturday morning, I drove to a hardware store and bought a new deadbolt for the front door. Not because the old one was broken, because I wanted to install it myself. The clerk handed me the box and asked if I needed help choosing the right model. "I've got it," I said. Back home, I removed the existing lock carefully. Screws out, plate off, mechanism slid free. I installed the new one, slowly following the instructions step by step. When I tightened the final screw, I tested it. Smooth turn. Solid click. I locked it from the inside and stood there for a second. There was no flashback, no dramatic music in my head, just the simple understanding that this door worked because I made it work. Later that afternoon, my dad called. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Yes." "We're not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Just wanted you to know we're okay." "I'm glad." He hesitated. "You don't owe us," he said. "I see that now." That sentence did more than any apology could have. "I didn't owe you," I replied. "But I didn't have to hate you either." He gave a short, almost embarrassed laugh. "Guess we both learned something." "Guess so." We talked for a few more minutes. Weather, his physical therapy, my work schedule, neutral ground topics. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was balanced. After we hung up, I walked through the house and checked each window, not out of fear but out of habit. Everything was secure. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of water and watched the streetlights come on. A couple walked their dog past the house. A car drove by slowly, music low. Normal life. I thought back to 3:47 p.m. on that Tuesday years ago. The locked door, the trash bags, the word grown. They had told me to handle life. I did. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just steadily. I didn't send $5,000. I didn't let them move into my spare bedroom. I didn't pretend nothing happened. I built something instead. Inside, my phone buzzed once more. "Proud of you," my mom had written. No conditions, no requests. I didn't overanalyze it. "Thank you," I replied. I went back inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights one by one. The house settled into its usual quiet. No one could lock me out of this place, not because I was stronger, because I was responsible for the key. People think revenge has to be loud. It doesn't. Sometimes it's just choosing not to repeat what broke you. My parents locked me out at 17 and stuffed my clothes into trash bags. They told me never to come back. For a long time, I thought proving them wrong would feel dramatic. It didn't. It felt steady. It felt like early morning's direct deposit signed paperwork and a door that locks from the inside. Family revenge stories usually end with someone losing everything. Mine didn't. No one went to jail. No one begged in the rain. What changed was control. I stopped waiting for permission to belong somewhere. I stopped confusing guilt with responsibility. And I learned that boundaries aren't punishment, they're maintenance. If you've ever been told you were on your own, I hope this reminds you that being on your own doesn't mean being alone. It means you get to decide what stays and what doesn't. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel. I share real grounded family revenge stories and military journeys like this. No fantasy, no shortcuts, just growth earned the hard way. If you've lived through family drama or had to build your life from scratch, you're in the right place.